Sai Deepak.
I think my position on Sabarimala is fairly clear and public. I don't think the judgment is constitutional. And as far as triple talaq is concerned, I think it's a slightly different question. One is a question of personal laws, and the other is a question of access to a temple. One is a question of, let's say, equality in a relationship. The other is a question of access to a specific place of worship where other sentiments have to be there. So clearly, I support the decision with respect to triple talaq, but I don't think there is any basis for drawing parallels with the Sabarimala case.
You see, once you become an industrialized society, you have urbanization. There's some kind of homogenization which goes on in the society. Are we not seeing the same kind of a clash that you have a homogeneous society, a modern society emerging, which is demanding equal laws for all, irrespective of their customs, local beliefs, and folk culture? So do you see it as a clash between modernity, the demand for modernity, with the equality, irrespective of the context, versus the traditional pre-modern society and its norms and the customs?
So I'd like to actually thank Sairaji for being very blunt that all faiths need reform. I don't know if all faiths need reform, but I'm happy for the admission that some faiths certainly need reform. So that's a great thing. I think that's an important admission. Second, I'm actually surprised that in the process of talking about Sabarimala and gender, and perhaps even triple talaq, somehow we have managed to create a justification for why a woman must wear a burqa, and we should try and understand why she needs to wear a burqa. So the progressive mind says that no, even when somebody is expected to wear a burqa, you should try and understand if there is an element of, let's say, free agency in that, and she is wearing it out of her own free will. It is surprising that we don't wish to respect the sentiments of those women who want to protect the traditions of the temple, and we seem to give more importance to those sections of people who want to challenge the traditions of the temple. So all I'm asking myself is, you want to respect sentiments, then respect sentiments across the board and not selectively. Second, whenever you bring in tradition, tradition is always going to be at loggerheads with modernity, but most importantly, a traditional place such as a place of worship cannot be expected to kowtow to the whims and fancies of modernity. Its loyalty is only to tradition, tradition, and tradition alone. Okay. Three, since we are all, I'm assuming we are all constitutional patriots, that seems to be the buzzword. The Constitution, from its origin, recognizes that one, whether a temple is a private property or not, it is certainly not public property, in the sense that when you enter a temple, you cannot enter there as a matter of right. It is a privilege, and there is a reason for it. You can practice your faith in the private confines of your home, whichever way you want to. If you choose to establish a temple of your own, even that could offend sentiments, because if it goes against tradition, people have a right to object to it. But you're going a step further, which is to say that I will enter the place of worship of a certain community, and I will impose my individual will on that particular institution at the expense of everybody else's sentiments. The Constitution is crystal clear on this. All fundamental rights are subject to the rights of other people, particularly when it comes to religious institutions. Your right as a believer is subject to the right of the institution and the right of the believer. That's it.
Was it not the same argument given in the defense of untouchability and the denial of the rights to the Dalits and the Shudras?
Very good, very good. In fact,
so how do you differentiate the Sabarimala argument from that argument?
Very good. In fact, let me actually answer this question. So we were just told about sati, widow remarriage, education, and now untouchability. None of these practices were abolished by the judiciary, by the way. They were abolished through a legislation, which is a consequence of a social will, which is the society says, I've had enough of this particular practice. Right? Show me one judgment of the Supreme Court which has struck down untouchability. Untouchability was struck down through Article 17 of the Constitution. Okay? So if it is a consequence of legislation, it is a consequence of social cogitation. People have...
Parliament were to make the law allowing entry of women into Sabarimala,
exactly.
Will you agree?
My point is, if the Parliament brings out this particular law, then the believers have a right to challenge that particular legislation. The judiciary's right is limited to examining only what the Parliament does. The judiciary cannot pick up a practice from the society and say, I will sit and decide the validity of this practice applying the lens of constitutional morality. Okay? And let me just clarify. There is no jurisdiction in the world, and I repeat, there is no jurisdiction in the world, no civilized country in the world, not even the United States, which allows the judiciary to sit in judgment of a religious practice independent of state action. Okay? So the first thing that I'm telling myself, so what are the broad points? One, the right of an individual when it comes to a public place of worship is necessarily subservient to the rights of the believers. आप घर में बैठ के जब आप मूवी देख रहे हैं, आप अपने सर पे पॉपकॉर्न डाल लीजिए, किसी और के सर पे पॉपकॉर्न डाल लीजिए, आप चिल्ला लीजिए, उससे कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता है. लेकिन अगर आप सिनेमा थिएटर जाएंगे तो आप पब्लिक जगह पे जा रहे हैं, तो जिन्होंने पैसा दिया है उस मूवी को देखने के लिए, आप उनके राइट्स को भी रिस्पेक्ट करेंगे. As simple as that.
The point Rahul is talking about. See, all across the world, the left has the concept of safe spaces, right? And the right always mocks that concept of safe spaces. But the argument which you are advancing, is it not an Hindu version of safe spaces, or the right-wing version of safe space, which is a traditional place, and you are basically arguing the same left-wing argument in a more sophisticated language, maybe?
See, I don't wish to get into the left versus right debate because I don't see myself as part of the right wing. I see myself as part of the Indic wing. I don't believe that there is a concept of right wing in India. Second, let me be blunt. The fundamental issue has been the inability to strike a distinction between diversity and discrimination, between uniformity and equality, between pluralism and standardization. I have seen over the course of this debate and several debates, repeated references to untouchability, to sati and whatnot. There is only one temple dedicated to a specific deity who happens to be a brahmachari, and in that particular place there is a restriction for a particular age group, not because of menstruation, but because he is a brahmachari. And we are being told that that practice needs to be necessarily compared with untouchability, that needs to be compared with sati pratha, that needs to be compared with widow remarriage. Where is the sense of proportion in this debate?
No,
Second,
I'd like to add something.
I'll have to finish my point. I'm not yet done, ma'am, and I've been silent all along. It doesn't make a difference if India is a secular country or not. You know why? Because a place of worship is not a secular place. By definition, it is a religious place. Okay? So please do not apply secular logic to religious places, because you will not tolerate application of religious logic to secular places. Okay?
Okay, my only...
I'm not done. Please, hold on. Anybody, I challenge members of this audience, because you happen to be a citizen of this country, can you just get into the Supreme Court and say that I will practice in the Supreme Court without having the necessary qualification, without following the necessary rules? Because then your argument is going to be, no, but when the Supreme Court comes out with rules, these rules are meant for everyone, there are not separate rules. Fantastic. Then why don't you recognize the fact that when it comes to the Hindu faith, it believes in diversity of spaces. There are specific spaces which are dedicated to a specific form of energy, and there are specific spaces which are open to everyone. If this particular faith's diversity is finished through the weaponized form of equality, which is nothing but standardization, I'm sorry to say it will result in unwarranted Abrahamization of the Hindu faith, and it will lose its originality, which I think is against the concept of Article 25 and 26. I'll just make one final point. You know, it's always possible to muddle the entire argument and muddle the entire issue by comparing it with something very, very bad or terrible. Nobody has been able to ask, or let's say answer the specific question. When you say that this temple does not allow women, and it has a problem with women, it is based on misogyny, it's based on patriarchy, I want to ask each of these people, what do you know about the temple before you have made that comment? What have you read before you have made that comment? Are you saying that you know better than centuries of people who have actually worshipped at the temple and who have practiced that particular faith? Unless and until you have a specific position, kindly don't make yourself the representative of the entire female community. You're not. Second, you can't speak on behalf of believers, you can't speak on behalf of the deity, you can't speak on behalf of the temple. To put it in the language of Game of Thrones, you know nothing, Jon Snow.
Thank you.